Hello, and welcome to episode 37 of The West is the Best Show. I'm excited about this little thing. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but either way, it's exciting. So, I'm coming out today as Antifa. Now, I know what you're thinking. Antifa sucks, but give him a break. Give him a chance here, okay? See, I saw they wanted to wear the red and black Fred Perrys, so I'm hopping on the bandwagon. I'm straight Antifa, and I will make the case that Antifa and people on the right, libertarian, Proud Boys, whatever, we have more in common than you think we do. So why I'm Antifa? I'm gonna go hit some tenets of the Antifa comrades, and I'll explain to you why we agree with what they're saying. Number one, they don't like fascism. I don't like fascism either. I think it's horrible. I think it sucks. I think it's kind of evil. I think to be a dictator and force things on people, not very fun. I don't think it's very Judeo-Christian of people to do that. And especially, Antifa, my homies, my home dogs, Antifa, they don't like Nazis very much, and I don't think that anyone does. I think it's a very, 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 very slim portion of the population that are even sympathetic to the regime, the Nazi propaganda. I think that it's kind of ridiculous and evil to think that another species are inferior. I've done some research on Adolf Hitler, Heil Dog, and not a fan. He was basically crazy. I think he was a lot smarter than people think he was, mainly because he was very much a manipulator. Because when he was talking to capitalists, he was a capitalist. Whenever he was talking to socialists, he was a socialist. He was very much for, and he was very, very smart. Like there was extensive plans for what was going to happen after World War II of the infrastructure that he was building. Very, very intelligent person. I think he was as smart as he was evil. I think I would argue, as long with Jordan Peterson on this, that he was probably more evil than most people think that he was. He was also very, very structured. I think that in the sociological spectrum, the more orderly you are, the more tendency you have to be dominant in nature. So he washed his hands about 20 times a day or more. So that's once every 30 minutes if you're up for 10 hours a day. Probably more than that, because he was very, very much a germaphobe, very much a clean and neat freak. And what he would do was he would perpetuate to his people that the blacks and the Jews and the minorities were basically like rats and cockroaches. He would constantly refer to minorities and people that he didn't like as vermin and disgusting and like a plague and infestation, to justify his narrow dogmatic worldview, in his perfect worldview that he tried to bring to fruition. He wanted very much the Aryan race, the blonde hair, blue eyes, but ironically he had neither of them, if I understand that correctly. Kind of a really crazy, evil person. Coward took his life. Real piece of shit. I think I forget, it was Gandhi that said, or something like that, that said that it's very rare that there's no good to come out of a bad situation. I don't think we can have that conversation because it happened this recently, but I think that there's some things we can learn from him. I think that you can learn from every situation. Mainly what not to do. Don't be an asshole and diminish the value of other people. And so I agree. Fascism is evil. Nazism is evil. They were the Democratic Socialist Worker Party of Germany or whatever, and he came in promising that he was going to rebuild the infrastructure and things of that nature. I think that he gets a lot of comparison to Donald Trump because he wanted to make his country awesome. And I don't think it's a problem to want to make your country awesome, but when you demonize other people, kind of sort of stacking the dead bodies to get to the top of it, is kind of intrinsically flawed in nature and morally bankrupt. Obviously, no one disagrees that Hitler was evil, except for a very few evil, crazy people who are justifying their personal insecurities and dislike for other people. They're using it as a mechanism to validate inaccurate arguments that they haven't put much time and research into. Which leads me to my next segue. Antifa. Me and Antifa believe, get ready, that Trump is too powerful, right? It's kind of a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek, though, because the reason why Donald Trump is so powerful is because Democrats kept vetoing all these things and giving Obama all these powers, these executive orders, and voting that he have more power and more power and more power, which is not so great. Now that the people that they don't like have the power, but they're like infrastructure, and poor people and all this kind of stuff. We need to help them. And I think, what is it now? The black unemployment is at the lowest that it's ever been. So Donald Trump is putting more money into the black community in the United States than probably any other president ever, including the first black president. Isn't it funny? He was the first mixed race candidate or whatever it was, and then when he was running, and then when he became president, he was the first black president. I think that's ironic. But Trump is too powerful. I don't know. I think I like him when it comes down to it, but I think there's 8 billion people on planet Earth. He's the number one person out of those 8 billion people, runs the fucking planet. His skin's a little thin. But the guy's alpha male, go-getter, boss man. I think that, I don't know if there's a better person on planet Earth at this time that I believe that could do a better job than him. I'm not saying the guy's perfect, but I think that he might go down as the most controversial and, in my opinion, beneficial, although sometimes crass president ever. Yeah, I think that he needs to get the Twitter fingers on check. But, man, I think he's doing an incredible job. He's doing an amazing job for libertarian values. I don't know how about the Jeff Sessions deal. Maybe he should listen to Rand and Ron Paul a little bit more on that one. But maybe that's my libertarian influences in my character. Trump is too powerful, I agree. But right now it works out for us, and all the people on the right and the middle are going, yeah, that's awesome, Trump. But what happens when the pendulum swings back the other way and we have President Sharpton coming in here with all this power and just fucking everything up? We'll see how that works out. So, Antifa. Me and Antifa, believe that white privilege is a bad thing. And I agree. I agree that white privilege is a bad thing. I don't necessarily believe it exists. I think it's a bad argument. But I think if it did exist, it would be bad. So I agree with that point. If white privilege did exist, I'm not convinced it does. I'm not convinced that I can't be unconvinced or swayed in my equation. And I was thinking about this morning or last night where, okay, I feel like I'm on the side with all the information. I'm saying I have derived my opinion from all these things I've researched, and I've compiled this information, filtered it through my personal convictions and the things I've experienced in my personal life, to derive this conclusion that there's no white privilege. However, if you are able to sway my opinion, fine. Prove to me that white privilege exists. I'll be happy to hear you. And if you're correct, I will change my opinion. That is incredibly aware. However, when we try to have this conversation, you're not listening to basic evidence that's presented to you. I want you to try and convince me. However, when you have your fingers in your ears going la 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 la, it's kind of like the old religious guys that were like, where you're like, well, did Adam and Eve, like, was Adam born with, like, male genitalia? And they're like, why does that even make sense or matter? Well, because, if Eve wasn't even created, then why would it even be applicable? Why would he even have it if the person to use it with didn't exist? I don't know. Well, it's just shit like that. So, why aren't you having this conversation with me? I'm willing to have the conversation with you. I'm willing to be swayed. Are you willing to be swayed? Are you willing to take the walk down the rabbit hole and end up and believe whatever the conclusion is? Because that's what I'm willing to do. So, if you're willing to take my hand and walk with the moonlight with me, then we'll find out if white privilege exists or not. But I don't think it does. I've never gotten a discount. I'm half Spanish. I'm half white. I don't know what the white is compiled of. I guess I'll have to do the 21andMe or whatever it is, the 23 or whatever. I don't know. One of the deals where you check your identity. Um, I have never gotten a discount. I never walked into Starbucks and they were like, "Yeah, it's $1.43 for a black coffee." Uh, hey, yeah, I don't know if you saw, but like, I'm white. I mean, can I get like a discount? Never happened, ever. Maybe we'll film a video for me going around buying shit and asking if I have 23andMe. There it is. I think it's like what is it, like a swab, or you piss in it or something? I don't know. Apparently, if other people have done it, and it'll tell you if you're related to them or whatever. But we might film a video of me going around buying shit, asking if I get a discount because I'm white. We'll do that one maybe. Because I don't think it exists. I think it's bullshit. I think it's justification for people not to take responsibility for their crappy lives because they made bad decisions. And I'm not saying I've made great decisions, but I've made better decisions than some people. And I think blaming things on the color of your skin or the color of other people's skin puts you at an incredible disadvantage for everything in life. Because if you believe that the world is stacked against you based on basic characteristics, I don't think you'll ever be able to achieve anything meaningful in life because you're always going to be pointing the finger at other people. And I had said in the episode before this, when we were talking about books, if you don't take responsibility, you can't take control. Black people are successful. They have hundreds of $millions of dollars. Black billionaires, millionaires. People run the companies that are, African American. They're not African American. If they're from Africa, they're African American. But if they're just black, they're black. They're Americans. I have some very dear friends that are black, and the ones that are super pumped up about life and are successful tend to not blame white people for their problems. And I don't know. I'm convinced it's correlated. Maybe people can convince me otherwise, but yeah, I don't know. And it leads me to my last point that Antifa and I agree with is wealth inequality. It's a big problem. Big problem. I think that it goes hand in hand with a lot of things. A lot of minority communities tend to have a lot more crime, not because they're black or Mexican or Asian or Indian, but merely because they're from poverty breeds crime. So there's a lot of economic reasons for those people's situation, and there's a lot of obviously poor white people. Statistically, there's more poor white people than there are poor black people. Black people are 56% of the world's the nation's population, and African Americans or black people are 14 to 16% last time I checked. So there's more poor white people than there are black people in this country. The majority of food stamps are consumed by white people because we outnumber. By we, I mean the half of me that's white. Are more than the African Americans that even consume it or not. But yeah, wealth inequality is a big problem. Mexico is a crime-ridden place, not because Mexicans are bad, but because they're poor. If you can't feed your family, you're more likely to break the law to feed them. When it comes to provide or die, you should be willing to do anything to provide for your family. I was having a conversation that I've mentioned a couple times with a friend of mine, talking about the Houston Hurricane Harvey thing, and there was people breaking into grocery stores and stealing food and stuff. And my friend was saying how she was asking me, well, would you look at this? I'm like, yeah, it's wrong. And she goes, why is it wrong? I said, these people are breaking the law. They're stealing things that they didn't earn or pay for. And she goes, well, you're saying you wouldn't do it. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I would kill a human being, cook them alive, and feed them to my family if I had to. I would do anything to provide for my family. Obviously, what's moral and ethical, da-da-da, and then if it gets real shit, then you have to do whatever it takes, like I just explained. But of course I would. If it was horrible, I would do it. But I'm not denying the fact that it's wrong. And so, once again, taking responsibility for your actions is something that a lot of my comrades and the black and reds don't do. They like to do a lot of bad shit, like punch children and women in the face, throw broken bottles, or like wine bottles filled with rocks in the crowds, and like to fuck people up and burn shit down because they're just anarchists, really. And they're all hippies that don't believe in property rights and communes, and everybody should have their shit taken from them, and all this stuff, and the wealth inequality. They hate all these rich people because they don't understand. I think the number one to be number in the 1% of income earners in the world, you need to make what, $36,000 a year? I mean, who's rioting against people that make $36,000 a year? And then the people who are in the 1%, I think in Texas it's like 436,000 or 446,000 or something like that. It's not a lot of money when you think about it. It's not a lot of money, and that's annual income. It's not a lot, and these people are screaming like there's all these poor people, these 99%. These are all people struggling to make their bills. 76% of the population lives paycheck to paycheck in the United States, the richest country on planet Earth. Now that means there's people that are making $5 million a year that are spending $5.2 million a year. Their expenditures rise with their income. So that's kind of a skewed way of stating it, but it is the truth. But it's not like everyone's working at McDonald's. If you're working at McDonald's, you probably deserve to work at McDonald's. I'm sorry. Like, if you have minimum wage work ethic, you have minimum wage skills, you deserve to be paid minimum wage. I think the minimum wage should be lowered or, like, abolished. Because I went to Sam's the other day to get a pizza, and I've gone there before. It's like $8 for a pizza, and it's one of my favorite pizzas. So I go in there, and I wait in line, and I order a pizza, and I pay my money, and I wait 36 minutes. I counted 36 minutes for them to give me a cold, incorrect pizza. Now, that would be fine, except for the cold and incorrect part, if it takes that long. But I've watched them do it. It takes 5 seconds. You go into the back, you take the plastic off the pizza, you put it into the pizza thing, it comes out on the other side, you cut it, and then you put it in the box. It takes 10 minutes. I've watched them do it, and I've done it multiple times before. Not me personally, but I've bought it and watched. And it's insane. Like, these people, and they forgot about me. I walked to the counter, I'm like, hey, and they're like, oh yeah, this guy. Those people should be paid less. I mean, they're all fucking mean. They're all mean. Like, they all mess shit up on purpose. They have the worst attitudes in the world. That's why they get paid what they get paid. I drive to work in the mornings, and I see the Chase building, the Coke building, all these banks and stuff. And it's black fucking windows until you get to the top, like 2. And then they're all on. It's like 5, 6 a.m. There's all the CEOs, all the people at the top are there working. I wonder why they're making so much money. It's because they're there fucking hustling when other people aren't. They deserve that money. There is income equality. It's because people smarter than you are taking the money, and they're not giving it to you. They deserve it, and you don't. So get smarter, make more money, work harder. That's kind of how it works. I mean, it's very on the nose, but there's no way around it. The reason why you and me don't have more money is because we're not working hard enough. We're not doing smart enough things. Now, I'm not as naive to suggest that people that have a whole bunch of money, some of them have done morally bankrupt things, or they've done illegal activities to procure that, or they're not shitty people or whatever. However, I would be remiss if I did not mention, I think it would be abhorrent to take what they have to provide for people who are too lazy, too stupid, or just don't want to work. Now, as my Judeo-Christian values and convictions would say, I believe it's the role of churches and charities that are optionally funded are helping those people. I don't think it's the government's job to do that. I think the national government's only job is to protect us, basically. I think should all be optional and local and deregulated. However, I don't know, man. Not sold. I agree with Antifa on some topics, but there's some things we can't get over, like the hurting people thing and the communism shit, and yeah, I don't know. I am Antifa. I got my thing here because I agree with them on these things, but gosh darn, the violence. You can't get over the literally the like, it's evil shit. Like, they're like hurting people in public and causing fires and stuff. They're literally doing things that they're claiming Donald Trump is doing. You know, as soon as he got elected, they laughed at him for 8 months. And then when he got elected, screamed at the top of their lungs and destroyed the country. Trump's going to destroy the country. It's going to be fires and burn down the whole thing. It's like, yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You did that. Trump didn't do it. He didn't order right-wing death squads to come in and fucking steal the Mexican children and burn them and hang them in the streets. You were doing that with white people. There was a video by this very lame band, Goodnight Alt-Right, and they literally broke into this Trump supporter's house, and they basically dragged him into his garage, tied him up, burned a swastika on his forehead, and killed him in his house for just voting for a person they didn't agree with. Now, Trump's not a dictator. He's not evil. And these people who believe in all this bullshit that, like, say they're transgendered or they're whatever, all these kind of, like, values that these folks who like this kind of stuff, only in America could you complain to the degree that you're complaining about. In no other country would you get away with the shit that you're doing, like rioting and hurting people and claiming that America's so unsafe. You see these buildings, like right here. If you're homosexual and you're in a Muslim-ran country, where Sharia law and Muslims and Islam are permeating the culture and overtake, you would be thrown off that building for just existing. And I don't think Donald Trump that's even a thought in his mind. So I would really check where your sources are coming from, the motivations of these people telling you that Trump is evil or that communism is good. Communism has never worked and has been responsible for over 100 million deaths in the past century. Hasn't worked, won't work. It's literally evil. Communism is literally evil. When you think about it economically, Ben Shapiro points out, capitalism is consensual sex, because if I don't give you something that you need and want for the best price, the best quality, I don't get to eat tonight. Capitalism is amazing. Now, socialism and communism is rape. You're forcing people to do things, and that's not where freedom is. That's where not happiness lives. So people are going to starve to death, and no one's going to be happy. Jim Rohn had said something that I've mentioned a couple times. If you take all the money in the planet and divide it equally among everyone, eventually it'll all be back in the same hands, because the decisions you've made up until now have made you poor. The decisions they've made up until then have made them rich. So let's make better decisions. Let's all be cognizant of the values that we agree with Antifa. Let's have some intellectual conversations if they're willing to have them. Most of them aren't. They just want to punch you in the face and just burn down trash cans and hurt children and be literal terrorists. But I don't know. Antifa. Anyways, thank you for watching. West is the best. Danger Space Media.